Welcome to the Divorce Allies podcast, a podcast and video series where we dive into all things divorce, the process of creating a settlement offer with a team of financial professionals, divorce mortgage, parenting, and relationship coaches. We cover all the areas of the divorce settlement process, from financial to even the emotional well-being. Hi, I'm Anna Graham, the team's small business mentor, helping our members explore the potential of their next chapter. Today, I'm with Melissa Gragg again, our financial mediator and negotiation expert. This episode, we are discussing the behavior patterns around a settlement offer. So, welcome, Melissa. How are you? I think that this episode is going to be very important because the previous two, we're kind of doing this in a little bit of like a part series. And the first two episodes, we gave you the basics. We told you why a settlement offer is important, kind of gave you the groundwork of it. Even last episode, we pulled up our own spreadsheets and walked through the property statement. But this episode is going to be talking about kind of really how you need to behave when you have a settlement offer, how you can use some leverages to get the best outcome. And Melissa's going to give us a lot of tips around that. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you.
So, like I mentioned before, when we have a settlement offer, a lot of times our clients are working in divorce mediation. That's the process they've chosen, or at least they're going to try it. But a big question that we have is, do you need to come up with a settlement offer before divorce mediation? What do you think?
Well, I think that one of the cardinal things that we talk about in the Divorce Allies is coming up with a settlement offer at the very beginning. And if you are not at the beginning and no one's talking about a settlement offer, then you come up with that offer at any point in the process. And so it's really, most people don't know how to put together a settlement offer or what it would look like. And a lot of the practitioners or attorneys will maybe wait until a lot further in the process to get to that offer. So there's a lot of psychology around not only offering first or kind of going about this process, but there's also a lot of misnomers about like, oh, you should never make the first offer. So that's usually what we hear more often.
Yeah, and why is that? Like, who's telling you not to make that first offer?
I think traditional negotiation theory would say you never speak first. And so a lot of times people are like, well, when I go to buy something, I don't want to tell them what I want to pay for it. So you go and buy a car and you're like, well, I don't want to tell them what I'm going to want to pay for it or what I think it's worth. I'd rather them speak first and then I'll negotiate off that number. And unfortunately, that's typically a situation where you could walk away. So you could buy this car, you could buy that car, you have choices. And so that's a negotiation technique when it's sort of like a free market, right? And you can go about and purchase any car and you can walk away from it. That's very different when you're in a negotiation for a divorce and you can't just walk away. So you can't just throw your arms up and say, well, I'm not going to take that price, or, tell me first. I'm not saying anything until you tell. Like all of those positioning or sort of like used car salesman tactics are not going to work very well in divorce, either mediation or litigation, because they're literally just putting fuel on the fire. And it's negotiation based on just control. Like if I'm going to buy a car, I control my money and I'm not going to give you but whatever I think I should give you. And sometimes that basis is just like, I only want to spend $10,000 on a car. So I'm going to go to the lot and I'm going to pick out the car and I'm going to say, you know what? That's the car I want. I don't care what price is on there. My budget is 10,000 and that's what I'm going to pay. So I'm in control of my money. I'm in control of whether I pay you that money for the car. And then the other person is in control of whether they are willing to give that car to me for $10,000. If the car is legit worth 13, that might be a reasonable stance to go about it. If the car is 25,000, then going into that tactic is going to literally, the other person's going to say, no, absolutely not, because you came in with a position that had no basis in reality. You didn't care about the car, you cared about what you were willing to do. If those pieces of control are in play, then you walk off that lot and you go buy a $10,000 car somewhere else. And it's just a matter of going into that situation over and over until you're successful. In a divorce negotiation, you don't have the capability to go shop around. And so you have to make those negotiations in a more closed container that then makes it so that those sort of bullying tactics or just like, oh, this is all I'm going to pay are not going to work.
Yeah. And, I think we kind of got into this too fast and too heavy, and I want to take it maybe like 3 steps back. So if people have been following this series, they kind of have a concept of, this is what my property statement is going to look like. I input some data, I collect some documents. Okay, what now? So then we kind of recommend, know this data inside and out. Talk to someone like Melissa, a financial mediator, a financial expert, that's going to, allow you to see some information a lot more clearly. How do you even start having that conversation with your clients about introducing negotiation or this concept of anchoring the deal? Can you explain even what anchoring the deal means or how you get there?
Yeah, and anchoring the deal, we'll kind of give an example, but anchoring the deal is psychologically, I'm putting a position forth or an offer or a value, and I'm encouraging or psychologically getting everybody to negotiate from that value. And so anchoring the deal is just really that it goes against what everybody would say, which is don't talk first. This anchoring the deal means that you are going to talk first, but you have to give enough information for the person to know why that value is the value. And typically it's because maybe the perceived value isn't there. And so I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
You need a pen, okay? And a traditional pen could cost maybe, $2 to $5, right? A writing pen, right? And so, and maybe you want a fancy pen. And so maybe it could cost $25 or $100. But that's your range, is a 0 to 100 type of situation, right? So you come to me and we're getting divorced and I have this pen and there's value to this pen, but I believe that this value is far greater than $2 to $10 because it has a diamond. And it's a very large diamond, as you can
Very
see, right?
large.
And so if I could physically show you it and be like, look, the diamond, or I'm listing it on something and I'm saying, it also has a 5 carat diamond. And so I believe the value that I'm putting forth to this for you to buy is actually $1,000. And now you're going to sit back and be like, $1,000? I can't possibly. I came to pay 0 to 100 for a pen. So you better tell me why this would be $1,000. And again, in the offer, I'm describing the fact that there's this diamond and that this pen is actually worth a lot more. And I'm positioning the value to you at $1,000. So now what does that do? If I make the offer first and I say $1,000 for this pen, and we can split it and you can have another asset that's $1,000. Well, you're going to say in your mind, I know that I only planned on paying 0 to $100, but now I got to figure out, do I want that pen with that diamond? Or if nobody wants it, we would sell it and we would see how much it would make on the open market. And maybe it makes $1,000, maybe it makes $100.
Yeah.
Now, vice versa, if you came to me and said, I want that pen and I will pay you $50. And I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, well, that's just disrespectful. Like you're lowballing me, right? And that's what a lot of people will think. You're lowballing me on this offer. You're trying to steal this from me. You obviously don't know the value. And then I tell you the value and you might be like, okay, well, and I don't offer you what my number is. then we're going to negotiate off of your number, and you're going to sit back and say, well, I offered 50. She still hasn't told me a number. So 100? Like I'll go to my max, which is 100, but I perceive the value as 1,000. And this is literally becomes a war of perceptions and or evidence and documentation that would support it. So if I come in with an appraisal that tells you that somebody looked at this diamond pen and said that it was worth $1,500, well, now everybody's going to think that the $1,000 offer was absolutely the best offer. They're going to think they got a little screwed by making that offer. So we'll talk about that. But then you don't question it. Now, if we just sit back and say, okay, we're just going to make up the numbers, right? And I'm going to say, well, it's worth 20,000 because I think diamonds are really expensive and I don't know, that's my best guess. And you still steadfast at $100. If you made the offer first, I would be trying to convince you to maybe go up to $500. And you can see that if I made the offer first at 1,000, you might be trying to figure out, well, what could I pay that 1,000? Or maybe she would take 750. So now already in the numbers that I've talked about, we would be at a higher position in the negotiations if we anchored the deal at the $1,000, then get the support at some point of the appraisal at 1,500. Typically, then the court and everybody is going to understand that you're going to change your value to what the expert said the value was. And so a lot of times, if you can get the expert to give you a preliminary value or something sooner for these big ticket items that maybe are questionable about the value, then you're really positioning that number at something that has foundation, it has supporting documentation, and it has an appraisal or evaluation that supports that number. Even if you don't show it at the very beginning when you offer, you don't say that, but you could note it. We have an appraisal that says it's worth this. We have a preliminary valuation that says it's worth this. And that's the numbers that I put in the property statement to then split and put in the two buckets to then offer to you.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that in order to anchor this deal, so you're coming in with this confidence that these things that you will be confident in, this is the value. But before you get to that anchor, before you get to making that confident offer, you need proof, you need valuations, you need appraisals. And is that kind of the space that you're saying someone in your field can help? Like, who else would be beneficial? Because we don't want our clients walking into the room giving an offer that they're just making up, correct? Like, they need an expert to help.
That's what the attorneys are going to say. That's what your team could be saying, is that you should wait, you should wait, you should wait. And don't worry about figuring it out when we have all the information, when everything is perfectly tied up in a pretty little package, then we will make an offer. And quite frankly, I am always talking about how a financial mediator can actually help you develop a settlement offer, but there aren't a lot of financial mediators out there. Typically, mediators are former lawyers or judges that understand the legal basis of a divorce, but they don't understand the financial. And so when you're talking to a financial mediator, the theory would be that they understand the financials. Maybe they have a background in accounting or finance. Maybe they have a business valuation credential or a CDFA. These types of things are just knowledge in the industry, but a financial mediator is going to give you a logical position to make some assumptions. And a lot of times we're just making assumptions of what we think the value is. And so like for the house, okay, let's go look at 3 different points. Let's go look at Zillow and realtor.com and some other, the real estate assessor's office or Trulia or some other thing. And if we have enough data points, like this is just statistics that nobody loves, but if we have enough data points, it's going to kind of correlate to a value. So if we look at all these values and we have this circle of reasonable value, somewhere in that range is where we can make an offer. And so do you have support? For the most part, people will either have one of two things: a very simple thing where you can just take the statements, put them on a spreadsheet and divide it in half, no big deal. For the most part, when you have complications, it's when somebody says the property is separate or the business is separate, and they're saying that I get it all and you get none of it, or there's fraud. And fraud is a legal term that nobody even goes in and testifies to. We just say, hey, there was money at the date of marriage and it is gone, and we would like credit for a portion of it. And so a lot of times in coming up with a settlement offer, it is highly financial, everything. And so if you don't have a background of understanding tax returns, financial statements, pension, like all of these present value calculations, like these are sometimes simple concepts, you're going to have a hard time trying to come up with a settlement offer with only a legal support team. And so, and a lot of times the legal support team is going to say, oh, no, let's get through subpoenas. Let's do all of this. It comes into that now you're crossing over. If you have leverage to talk about some of these things like the fraud or the hidden assets, that's great. But now you're also talking about timing, and timing becomes really important at the beginning because nobody really wants to go through this whole process, right? And so if you're divorcing a toxic person, they don't want to do the work. So you kind of position them to, you request a bunch of documents, get them to start doing the work, and then you come in and kind of the offer is letting them off the hook in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
So you can't let them all the way off the hook if you're really missing documents, but if you can make a good enough assumption or have enough evidence, then you might get to a position that is enough. It doesn't ever mean that it's going to be the highest position you could get or the most money you could possibly get in divorce. It means that it is good enough based on the knowledge that you have of your financial situation. And we're not looking for windfalls in these situations. Like, you're not going to go in and get everything and the other person is going to get nothing. You know, that's just not going to be warranted by the court.
So another question that I have from you, kind of just describing this. So we're talking about timing a lot, that, before all of these, before divorce mediation, but realistically, how long is it going to take for someone to collect all of these documents, get these appraisals, get these valuations, to come up with an appropriate settlement offer that they could even present? Like, if anyone listening, should they almost be contacting you before they even file, the day of filing? Like, how does that kind of play with timelines and what they should consider? Is it, this is all going to happen within a week, a month, 6 months, 2 years?
Here's the crazy part is that right now you can, like, you would probably think, okay, I'm going to go call an attorney, and you try to make some appointments with some attorneys. And it's a great strategy to meet with some attorneys. And once you meet with them, they can't be hired by your spouse, so that's usually a tactic that people are using at the very beginning. But attorneys got wise to that. So they usually charge for that first meeting, and they could charge $300 to $500 for you to have that first meeting, because then they know they can't work with the spouse after that. Mm-hmm. So in that meeting, you're doing a couple different things. You're either trying to figure out if they financially understand anything or what their plan is for the divorce process. Realistically, most financial professionals will offer you a free session, or they will sit down with you. Financial planners sometimes can't even charge for some of this information. And a lot of them have credentials that are CDFAs or things like that. So reaching out, and typically not your own financial planner because they could talk to your spouse, but reaching out to a financial professional, and this is going to be the rough part, 3 to 6 months before you really want to file. And I say,
okay,
yeah, because there is so much that goes into, and part of it is, are you mentally capable of doing a lot of this work at the very beginning? Like, are you capable of going out today and running a marathon? Okay,
no.
most of us are not, right? So if you're not capable of going out and running the marathon today, which is the entire process of the settlement offer, then you're literally doing like the couch to 5K, right? You're like
Mhm.
starting off, okay, like where do I start in this process? And you're determining that you're going to spend a certain amount of maybe time or effort every week, every day, every month to move this forward. If you don't have money and you just are thinking, well, I can't get started anywhere, that is the biggest misnomer. Like these financial professionals may or may not charge you a lot of money. A lot of them, if they're financial professionals, they might just want you to eventually invest with them, right? And so they're putting in this time and effort to give you information. There's also a lot of fixed fee services that you can start to develop your property statement or your budget, which is really income and expenses. It's not really your budget, it's really a list of your income and expenses. Those are the first two things that the attorney is going to do with your retainer once you pay them. Those are the first two things that need to be filed with the court, sometimes with the petition or with the initial filing into your specific state. And so you're calling an attorney, you're then having them fill out financial documents that potentially will have to be updated or changed once the expert gets involved. So why don't you back up and say, why don't I talk to the financial professional first? And then they're walking you through, because the 3 to 6 months is because this is time intensive for you if you don't have the money to pay somebody to do it within
Yeah.
4 weeks, right? You know, like
Yeah.
we can value a business, we can put together the income analysis, we can put together the property statement and everything for very quickly in maybe a month, right?
Mhm.
But that
Yeah.
would mean that you have some of the documents. And so a lot of it
Yeah.
is time that it takes for you to collect it and walk down that path to get ready for the marathon. When you call the attorney, that's when you're ready for the marathon and you're presenting to them then your full financial picture. And you're saying to the attorney, hey, here's my full financial picture. And I don't need to know how we get divorced, right? We waste a lot of time asking those questions. I need to know what would be your strategy based on what I have or the three major issues that I see in my divorce. We have a business, we have some kids, our kid has some special needs, and I am a stay-at-home spouse, right?
Yeah.
Those are my three issues. I would like to talk about what is your plan, because now it's a legal plan of maintenance and alimony, which are legal issues, and or the property split based on the state statutes. So quite frankly, when we come right back around to it, it does take some significant time. And for the most part, sophisticated professionals who have good jobs or businesses, they are contacting us at least 6 months beforehand, before they even tell you that they're interested in divorce, kind of in the cover of darkness, in order to understand what is their financial reality and where can they negotiate from. And so for the most part, your spouse could already be doing this. You're sitting back and thinking, well, nothing happens until we file. Quite frankly, it should happen before you file so that
Mhm.
when you file, it's a much more efficient process.
Absolutely. And to kind of wrap things up here, knowing that this is a marathon, that it is going to take, like you said, a 3 to 6 month time frame and sometimes longer, how can something like the Divorce Allies, this community that we've built, how can we help when it comes to creating this settlement offer?
I think it's fascinating. So a lot of times people could benefit from any type of group that pulls together multiple professionals. What happens in traditional divorce is we go and we contact a financial person or we contact an attorney, and now they're like gatekeeping, or like they're like protecting us, like they're, we're their only client. And they're like, oh, I don't want you to mess up anything, so don't talk to them and don't talk to them. It's a lot of fear-based methodologies that they just want to make sure that you're taken care of, but the system is really, really messed up. And so in going to somewhere like the Divorce Allies, what you're trying to do is get the information you need to make the offer, to be prepared when your attorneys do certain things, so that they're not literally charging you to explain to you what the process is. You want to pay them to do the process. You want to pay them to negotiate on your behalf. You want to pay them to know the laws so well that they can see where you have a position that is supportable by the law, by the documentation, by the financial expert. Like, they should have enough knowledge about the financial situation to be able to call in the right people. And so a lot of
Right.
times, if the attorney doesn't know the right people, or like in the business valuation community, we have a ton of people that retire and we don't have a lot of people that are left, right? And so if their person is gone, they don't know who to recommend to you. And so you're now having to kind of be your own advocate or your own hero. And what we have seen through divorces is that the attorney has a role in the divorce. And the more you keep them at that role, and you don't make them your financial expert, you don't make them your therapist, you don't make them your narcissistic abuse coach, you don't make them your mortgage specialist, right? These are areas that they're going to think. Attorneys always think that they know everything, right? So they're going to think that they know enough information in these spaces. But the Divorce Allies is coming in and saying, listen, you need an expert in all of these spaces. So you need an expert that's going to tell you about the mortgage, tell you whether you can keep the house or if you're going to have to sell it, right? Maybe you guys financially couldn't afford the house in the beginning. Then you need somebody to tell you the reality. You need a narcissistic abuse coach, regardless of whether you think you're married to a narcissist or there's a diagnosis. A lot of times there are toxic tactics that are used in the divorce process that you need to be self-aware and prepared for. Understanding mediation. Lawyers are lawyering because they are not mediators, okay? A lot of them are becoming mediators, but they don't get to be in the room as much as the financial expert gets in the room. Like, I'm in the room all the time with mediators and seeing everybody else's kind of way of doing things and can give a perspective. So you need a mediation coach. You need somebody who will tell you mediation strategy, because your attorney probably doesn't know it because they fight in court. They know litigation strategy, they know trial strategy, which is basically not necessary if you can do alternative dispute resolution or figure out how to lodge an offer. Offer something. Guess what? You don't have to go to mediation to do an offer. You can literally have it go back and forth via email. But the Divorce Allies actually brings these professionals together. And we also have a child parenting specialist, not only for how to parent during the divorce and co-parent after, but you're going to have to develop a parenting plan. And you can Google them and you can go look at them and see what questions to ask. But for the most part, it's going to be helpful if somebody walks with you. A lot of times these professionals are not as expensive as an attorney, and they may have like a fixed fee or a certain number of meetings. And so in our kind of experience, if we pull all of us together, right? And then you're also there to be like, hey,
Yep.
you've been staying at home, but you need to go make money. We have this thing
Absolutely.
called the internet that is a great place to make money. I don't care where you're at and what phase you are in life, right? So all of these things we already know. Self-care, we got you. Meditation, not mediation, meditation, we got you. So the Divorce Allies is coming at this from a holistic approach and saying, guess what? You need a lawyer to file the case and finish the case, but could you use other professionals to get it done? Or you're in the middle of your case and no one's talking to you. You're not part of the team anymore, and you thought that this was your case. You probably need to get other advice. But a lot of times you can't just fire your attorney. That's not how it works. Once you hire that person, you better be committed to them for life for this case, because by the second attorney, no big deal. by the third attorney. If the court sees that you have a third attorney, it's going to look bad on you, not the attorneys. And so, quite frankly, you could get way more advice from some of these other practitioners, make some decisions for yourself based on your financial reality, and then you're going to the attorney and saying, here is my offer. An attorney is a conduit to settle your case. Now, if you can't settle, they go to court, but realistically, their goal is to help you settle it. They just may not know how to do it in a very economical fashion, right? Because they don't have to. So the Divorce Allies is a way that you get your answers. We come live. You can ask questions about your specific case, and we give you some of the advice that we know with 10, 20 plus years of experience for most of us. And it's a cheaper, more economical way of getting this done. The reality is you have to take control of some of these issues. You have to go through the documents. Even when you get the bank statements, you're going to have to look through them. You know, we did this with a client yesterday, and I was like, hey, has anybody looked through these? Hey, attorney, did you look through these? No. Hey, client, did you look through these? No. I mean, like every single statement, we had 12 statements for 1 year. Every single statement I pulled up and I was like, look at this. This is craziness. You guys have a question, you know? So realistically, you're going to need to find the people that are going to support you in the areas that you think are the most important in your divorce.
Yeah. And I just wanted to echo something that you said. And it's just kind of like, you know these things and then someone else says it and it sinks in. But the lawyer is supposed to be the expert on the law. For some, out of, 2 decades, 3 decades, however long it's been, they've now taken on the role of everyone else. And I think lawyers get such a bad rep because they don't necessarily know the best way to do some of these things. But since when should they be the coach? Since when should they be the financial expert? Like, they are the expert on the law, and that's how they should kind of stay in their lane a little bit. And we're not dogging on them at all. It's just, we're saying, if you have other spaces where you need help outside of the law, absolutely go hire a parenting expert, go hire a mortgage coach to even, should I stay in the house? Should I not? Your lawyer isn't going to answer that for you, or well, maybe they shouldn't, but I think,
what happens is you pay a lawyer $5,000 or $10,000 to get started. And so what they do is they put together that financial statement and your income and expenses, right? And then now you've paid them $5,000 or $10,000. They've already blown through that. So now they're charging you $5,000 a month just to work through like motions and filings and subpoenas and all of this discovery is what it's called. But the psychology of what happens is that I'm paying so much to my attorney, I don't have other money. And so they're telling their attorney, like, I don't have other money to hire other experts. I don't have $5,000 to give to a business valuation expert. I don't have, a couple $1,000s to give to a divorce coach and things like that. So the attorney is sitting back and saying, okay, well, let me try to help you. Like, okay, let's think about this house. Let's try to figure it out. I've bought a house before. I know about mortgages. The problem is they are overextending themselves, and they're also trying to please you. So if you're calling them and you want to talk for a half an hour about how sad you are or how you can't get this done and you're overwhelmed, they're probably not going to be the best person to have that conversation. And then at the end, they're going to charge you per 0.5 of an hour at $500 an hour for you to have a therapy session, when it really should have probably been like a therapist would be cheaper, a mortgage specialist would be cheaper. All of these people are more economical, and then we've pulled them together in a very low rate for a monthly fee. So again, it's just about finding the right people that are economical, that when you talk to them, you say, how much is this going to cost? What is this going to include? Okay. Mm-hmm. And most experts don't want to hear that conversation, but that's going to protect you so that you are literally saying, okay, I'm willing to pay for this. And what the expert should say, or that person should say, is, well, I've done this before. This is how this is going to be the best way for you to work through it. And this is the cost. And you might have to go and find other ways, or even a lot of this information could be free online. You just have to be doing the work to find it. We culminate it together very efficiently. You might have to go out there and get the information, which is why we do this podcast, so that we can get some of that information out to you in a rational form, but continue to champion for yourself. And big divorces, I mean, we have really high net worth divorces that we could at least plan 6 months. And then, like yesterday, we had a meeting with an attorney and they were like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. Do you have a list together of what is all included? And we showed them the list and it was like hundreds of, like things on the property statement. And the attorneys are like, oh, you guys are prepared. Oh yeah, we've been preparing for 8 months. Yes, like we have
Yes,
everything.
we've been doing this.
What do you need? Let's go. Because when you start the divorce process, it's a system. Like let's say in Missouri, they typically want you to get through the process in 12 months. If you need 6 months to prep for it, I don't think you want attorneys on the clock while you're prepping, right? You may want them to be able to really quickly, and that's what we talk about, is negotiation strategies, right? Yeah. In the circle, we talk about strategies because if you're ready, then you're saying your attorney's going to do this, you're going to make the offer, and then they're going to come back. What's your response? And then they're going to come back. What's your response to that? And then where are you going to pivot? What are the two forks in the road? Like you've already walked through that with everyone and you're just now literally executing on the marathon.
Yeah. Well, okay, I think that this is, we're wrapping up here, but this is a hard concept. It's hard to understand the negotiation and all of these strategies behind it. And I think next episode, we're going to come in with more case studies and like the pen example. I think that was perfect. Going through more, like concrete examples and case studies on how you could even present or word these negotiations to your spouse or your spouse's attorney. So Melissa, once again, thank you. We appreciate you. Our websites are down below, thedivorceallies.com and Melissa's is valuationmediation.com. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.